do we want institutional money to come into this market? And if we do,
it's unstoppable.
Remember, what you're kind of saying is it's like these individualistic rights. Like, well, we have the right to do what we want. Our home is our private space, so we can grow whatever the fuck we want to grow there, and use it how we want to do it. Right? But then you got corporate and the pharmaceutical companies. When they bring their capital to the table, as soon as it's open, it's going to be a free-for-all, right? And then that begs the question, well, then do we need regulation? And if we do need regulation, then how much? Because it's kind of like saying, well, institutional money only comes to play when there is regulation.
It's very important that you've touched on the pharmaceutical industry, because this is such a double-edged sword, and it's quite a divisive issue. It's very easy to blame Big Pharma for everything. All of our laws, one of the laws that regulates the cannabis industry presently is the Medicines and Related Substances Act and the Pharmacy Act, which means that at this point, if you're going to grow, it's only going to be if you're going to grow commercially, it's only going to be for medicinal purposes, etc., etc. But these are all laws that were written decades ago, long before anybody was thinking along the lines of cannabis. But if cannabis is medicine, and you have a person allowed to grow at home, let them grow their medicine at home, unregulated. But I still think that it's important that in an industry such as the pharmaceutical industry, if you are going to start making medicinal claims to say that this product always has this concentration, and this product has been proven to treat this form of cancer or this form of age-related wasting syndrome, whatever the case may be, if you are going to then make those claims and actually put those claims on a product or on a leaflet or in an advertisement, then you do need strict regulation. And then you do need strict licensing requirements, because then those people who are growing the cannabis need to ensure that there's no toxic mold on it, that they're not using any pesticides, and for that matter, that this strain of cannabis is not getting cross-pollinated with other strains of cannabis and is, in fact, time and time again producing the same quality of cannabis, which can then be converted into the same strain of oil, which can then be formulated into whatever registrable medicine it is. So you have to do a separation. People are perfectly within their rights to treat themselves with homegrown cannabis. Yes. But then, if you're going to make the claims, then you need to go through the red tape, is essentially what I'm saying.
We know lots of people who are growing medical marijuana to save the world and be altruistic and save the planet, but it's going to be a minefield of regulation, like PM said. It really is. I don't think I could possibly even deal with the amount of regulation that the medical fraternity is going to need, because it's like we've been shouting about it for years. It's medicine, in the hope that it might turn legalization around. It's quite cool that it is medicine and it has all these beneficial properties, but it's like the government's latched onto this now and said, okay, all right, if you want to call it medicine, we'll treat it as medicine, and it will become extremely regulated. And if you want to get into that, be my guest, get into it, but it's going to be fraught with piles and piles of rules.
Myrtle?
I think it's really important that we bring in our 350,000 registered traditional healers in South Africa, because you are not going to be able to license all of the gogos, and all of the nyangas. It's just it's not going to happen, and it mustn't happen, because those healers have been using this medicine for at least the last 600 years. Even before the Dutch came here. It was being used as a medicine and mainly as a tea. It was the Dutch who taught the indigenous people how to smoke. So one needs to go back in the history when it comes to medicine. You have to be kind of idealistic and say that there's room for everybody, because I know that the indigenous knowledge systems is the most important thing to me when it comes to medicine, because we have to give credit where credit is due for the healers, because right now, if you had to take all the South African allopathic doctors and all the healers, the knowledge of the cannabis plant as medicine lies with the healers. They know a lot more about cannabis. I've shown a gogo 2 bags of weed. And she'll be able to smell it, sniff it, taste it, whatever. And she'll say, okay, that one's really good for sleep. And that one's really good for anxiety. So there is an indigenous knowledge system that there has to be a space for. There will be, because the Gogos know how to shout, and they know how to stick together, and they know how to get what they want. So you have everything from your homegrown little thing to the Gogos to the pharmaceuticals, and there's room for everybody.
And I think that touches on a very important point, because all of these laws that presently exist around the medical industry, and I'm not now talking about the laws that relate to traditional healers, but those that I was talking about, the strict red tape around the pharmaceutical industry, all of these things were written at a time when there was no acknowledgement of the validity and legitimacy of traditional medicine. With our constitution, with our 1996 constitution, came an entire shift in thinking. I mean, not only in relation to traditional medicine, but it really was a document which said, all right, never again. We used to do things this way, but now we've got to focus on human rights and equality and respect for everybody. Now, as the years have progressed, there have been laws around traditional healers, etc. But this is one of the fundamental things, and this isn't so much a legal point as it is a human point. We have shifted as a society in the way that we think, and the way is, in a sense, that we're supposed to think, which is an all-inclusive way of thinking, as Myrtle suggested, and to keep imposing what are essentially colonialist rules on what is and what isn't medicine, and what you can and cannot put into your body when you want to treat yourself, is a throwback to 50 years ago. You know, it goes back to the Reagan era, if not to 300, 400 years ago. So it's that shift in thinking that needs to occur, not only in the everyday members of society, but in our parliamentarians who are tasked with promulgating these laws, because it would be very unfortunate if they made it so strictly regulated at the end of these 2 years that it's only big pharma who can afford and who are able to jump through this red tape. And you then take the industry out of the hands of the people who need it most in this country, which are the small-scale farmers and the small-scale traditional healers. If you deprive them of their ability to make money, it's a travesty.
So yesterday, this book here, I interviewed Gigi Alcock. Have you heard this Castronomics Revolution thing? So I was saying on the show, I've been covering entrepreneurship for over 3 years now and never even heard of it. Never even heard of something called the informal economy. Seen it, but never really understood it and gave it any street cred whatsoever. It dwarfs the formal economy in size. It is fucking huge, right? It really is massive. And you know what's interesting about that mindset? You're talking about, and I love the point that you made, because I 100% agree with that. If the knowledge sits with these indigenous healers and they are trading, right? They don't want regulation whatsoever. They don't want Uncle Sam knowing how much they're making, whether that's 6 grand, 3 grand, or 30 grand, or 360 million rand a year. Do you know what I'm saying? They don't want regulation whatsoever. And my fear is that if you look historically back at capitalistic societies, inevitably what happens is that government starts to poke things with the stick and goes, oh, this is shiny new, we can make a lot of money here. And guess who has the ear of the politicians? The lobbyists, right? So then inevitably, and this is my fear, is that if that happens, if red tape comes in, however that manifests itself, but if regulation does come in and it only benefits big corporates, which is inevitably likely given our previous track record, that you're going to have a very severe consequence manifest. And it's going to, think about it. You've got this market, which is let's call it $200 billion, conservatively. We don't actually know how big it could be. It could be $1 trillion industry. Who really knows? And when you've got that amount of opportunity on the table, and you've got two opposing forces, one is saying, well, we don't want regulation because we want free trade. Don't come piss on our parade here. We've been doing it for 600 years. And then you've got the free market capitalists, so you've got your entrepreneurs, and then you've got the big corporates. And between those three things, that for me just smells like a melting pot that's just waiting to go off.